In the year 1800, India was on the cusp of a new century, marking the beginning of a new era in Indian history. By the mid-1700s, the British had gained control over most of India after decades of struggle with various Indian kingdoms and the decline of the Mughal Empire. By the 1800s, the British had established their dominance over nearly all of India, and there were no significant native powers left to challenge them. During this time, British rule in India was characterized by economic exploitation, social change, and political subjugation. The majority of ordinary Indians lived simple lives. Most people wore traditional attire, such as dhotis and turbans, with some wealthier individuals opting for clothing influenced by Western styles like pants and shirts. Even though British colonial rule brought modernization and urbanization to some parts of India, many rural areas continued to have a traditional way of life. Housing in that era was typically made of materials like grass, thatch, mud, and cow dung, rather than cement and stone. Only a few affluent and educated individuals lived in houses with more modern construction materials. The majority of the population lived in rural areas, practicing agriculture and animal husbandry for their livelihood. In terms of population, India had a relatively low population density during the 1800s. The entire Indian subcontinent, stretching from Afghanistan to Myanmar, had a population of approximately 160 million. In contrast, today, these same countries have a combined population of over 1.2 billion people. Most people during this period were engaged in agriculture, primarily cultivating crops like indigo, cotton, opium, and rice. A significant portion of the population also worked as laborers in cities to earn a living. However, economic opportunities were limited, and even with long hours of labor, many struggled to make ends meet. Entertainment options were limited, and people often spent their leisure time in religious and cultural activities like bhajans, devotional songs, and kirtans, religious singing and chanting. The British colonial era in India brought about significant changes in various aspects of Indian society, including education, governance, and culture. While some aspects of life improved with modernization, many Indians also faced exploitation, poverty, and socio-economic challenges under British rule. Overall, life in India during the 1800s was marked by a mix of traditional and colonial influences, with significant variations depending on one's socio-economic status, region, and access to education and resources. To pass the time, people in the past often played traditional Indian games like kabaddi and kho, since sports like cricket were not known during that era. People also placed a strong emphasis on religious practices and typically had their meals after performing bhajans and kirtans. As for their diet, it was primarily based on wheat, rice, and vegetables, with some communities, like those in Tatiala, incorporating fish into their meals. The diet of people during that time was generally healthy and clean, which contributed to a lower prevalence of diseases. After working hard in the fields throughout the day, villagers would gather in the village shaupal, common gathering place, in the evening to relax and engage in conversations. Electricity was not available, so people relied on oil lamps, and the environment was relatively pollution-free with lush green landscapes. The lifestyle was physically demanding, with most daily chores done manually, but this active lifestyle kept people healthy. In terms of transportation, there were no modern vehicles like cars or trains. People used bullock carts and horse-drawn carriages for travel, and many walked long distances if needed. The caste system played a significant role in society during that time, determining people's occupations and roles in the community. Despite the absence of advanced medical science, people in the 1800s primarily relied on home remedies and natural treatments for common ailments. Diseases like cholera and plague were prevalent, and medical facilities were limited. Housing typically consisted of traditional materials such as thatch, mud, and cow dung, and only a few had access to more modern construction materials. entertainment options were limited, and people found solace in religious and cultural activities. The lack of technology meant that daily tasks were labor-intensive, but it also fostered a strong sense of community and self-sufficiency. Overall, life in India during the 1800s was deeply rooted in tradition and agrarian society. People lived a simple yet fulfilling life, relying on their hard work and close-knit communities to sustain themselves. The quality of clothing during that time was indeed excellent, with Indian fabrics known for their intricate designs and durability. However, when the British arrived in India, there was a decline in the quality of Indian clothing. Indian textiles, though of high quality, were relatively expensive. After the British introduced mechanized production in factories, the cost of clothing decreased significantly, making British-made garments more affordable compared to traditional Indian textiles. The economic disparity between the British and the Indians widened during this period. While an average British clerk earned around 20 to 40 pounds as a salary, an Indian employee typically earned only £1. The Indian population faced various challenges, including famines and droughts, which further worsened their economic conditions. The 1857 Indian Rebellion marked a significant turning point in India's history. It was a time when the British were suppressing the revolt and capturing the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar. During this period, the use of currency existed, but barter systems were still prevalent, where people exchanged goods for other goods, such as wheat for rice or rice for millets. In terms of education, there was a lack of access to schooling, and literacy rates were extremely low. However, many families placed a strong emphasis on imparting values and cultural knowledge to their children, ensuring that traditional values were passed down through generations. Despite the economic challenges, people in that era often displayed a sense of brotherhood and camaraderie. Even though they had limited financial resources, jealousy and resentment were not as widespread as they are today. People may have been financially constrained, but their hearts were rich in many ways. To adapt to modern times, it is essential to focus on preserving and passing down cultural values, maintaining a sense of community and mutual respect, and embracing technological advancements while being mindful of their impact on society and the environment. Balancing progress with cultural heritage and social values can help us learn valuable lessons from the past while shaping a brighter future.